Everyone, it's very excited to see you all here. So basically the fifth episode of the E27 webinar. So we've been hosting this event since late last year, and yeah, it's very excited because today is actually a very special episode of our webinar. So I'm going to start with something about what this event is all about. So basically, we are hosting this webinar as we want this to be as a learning platform for all of our community of readers and audiences. So we invite speakers from various backgrounds to speak about their expertise, their insights, their experiences on various topics. And today, because as we already know, I'm not going to repeat it or say the C word again, since we are facing a rather challenging time at the moment as a global community. We believe that as a platform, we need to help our audiences by providing them all the resources and tools to basically to make sure that their business can go on as usual, at least. So yeah, that's why we are as from the content team, from the E27 content team. My name is Anissa. I'm the editor. We are planning 3 special episodes of webinar. This will be the first one of those special episodes. So all of these 3 episodes are going to discuss basically how, in times of crisis like this, how businesses can help to stay afloat through different aspects of their business. So today, this is the first episode of this special edition. And what we're going to focus on today is about remote working from home. Something that has been along for a long time, but suddenly everybody's doing it now. And we all wonder how to do it right, how to make sure that we can do this right. So to answer those big questions, we have 2 very special speakers today. So the first one is Wai Hung, chieftain and co-founder at StoreHub. Wai Hung, please say hi to everyone. And then, hi, everyone say hi to Wai Hung. And then we also have Sean Liao, founder and CEO at Imaginato. Hi, Sean. Say hi to everyone. Everyone say hi to Sean. Okay, so without further ado, let's just hear from the speakers, their experiences and insight about remote working. So yeah, I will start with Sean first. So would you like to share?
Yeah, I think you need to stop sharing and then I'll share my screen.
Stop now. All right.
Cool. Everyone see okay? Yep. So first of all, thank you for having me. This is usually not something that I do much. I felt this was a really important topic to share about. Remote working, remote teams, something I've been doing for a long time. And although all these years I'll individually share about it and try to mentor about it, doing this right now, I felt like this is something I couldn't not do. So my company, Imaginato, we're a tech development partner. So we work with companies to build their tech platforms. Core engineering team is in China. So the setup being a remote team that helps local teams around Southeast Asia and also around the globe. There's a lot of the principles that I'm going to talk about that we do and practice to make it work better. We're primarily agile, so the things that we do with optimization and growth, we practice Scrum. Everything is about helping the company to reach product market fit, and then in the scaling phase, how to help them with thinking about product, how to innovate, and then becoming essentially their tech team. Right? We're actually bringing tech startup culture to these companies in a lot of ways. More of the older companies that haven't done this before, but doing this in a remote way is extra special, I would say. So this is something I didn't know if I wanted to share because I was afraid it would date me. But anyway, I'm sharing it anyway, so you guys can get an idea of what remote work was like back in that time. Pretty much the same setup you guys would have today. So, in terms of actual hardware, a little bit different, but everything you need is there. And since that time, pretty much it's been a lot of remote teams. In this case, I was managing a team remotely. My team was in Chicago, I was in the Bay Area. But then I would take myself, my family to Asia and essentially do even more of that. The first thing I wanted to share about was I think something that when I first started doing it, was the biggest large scale business I did in a remote manner, having remote teams. And this was for Rocket Internet. This model, Arazu, was the first Airbnb of China, built from China, local company. It was to be large scale. It was to be competing directly with Airbnb. It was also in tandem with the sister companies around the world called Wimdu. So we had essentially our China company, our China entity that was calling in. I was, syncing up with world leaders, and we were trying to figure out how to share best practices, what was working for me in China, what was working for them, and sharing, the model and how to improve it, right? So there were multiple levels of remote communication happening and syncing. So I think that aspect of it plays a big part of this. And also because it was a rocket venture, it was super aggressive. It was about speed, it was about scale, it was just conversion. So all the good stuff that you guys are all dealing with in the world of startups. So our kind of the big goals we had, right? Launch quick. We had 30 days to launch. I remember when they came to visit me in China, and they're like, you guys, let's get going in 4 weeks, let's go live. So going live fast. We had to do expansion quickly. Today, we wouldn't be thinking so much about, we think more about getting it right first and expanding, but then it was like, you're just going to expand. We're just going to cover the whole country, which means a lot of remotes, right? Like I mentioned, keeping in sync so that what we do here, what we did there in China is also being learned about and applied globally and vice versa. And the big one of becoming number one. So that was a huge pressure and a huge load on my back. So I think Wahong later could talk about how much that pressure would be to get something out there at that impact, make an impact and at that scale. Right. This was not our first version, but this is just to highlight. So we did go live in 4 weeks. We had all these cities, if you can't read the Chinese, but those are all the cities that we had to go live in. We focused on 4 or 5 cities at first. So it was about getting the hotspot, I don't want to say hotspot, getting the places that were most popular for booking travel, right? So getting guys on the ground in Shanghai. We're based in Beijing. So Shanghai, Qingdao, Xiamen, a couple places that we knew would get, say, 70–80% of the bookings up front. So right away, I would say in the first month, we were already implementing lots of methods and how to manage a remote team. Because if you look at what our value prop is, and we're saying that you're going to be able to do this, you're going to offer thousands of rooms. You promise that you book it and you're going to get it, right? We're dealing with a country that didn't do private booking. It was just travel. It was just hotels. There was nothing about private rentals, short-term accommodations. This is about bringing a brand new concept in and then making sure that when people booked it, they would get the same quality experience as a hotel. A lot of that pressure ended up on the shoulders of the remote team, right? Because these guys had to deliver, meet with the property managers or the hosts. They were the ones that had to actually handle the operational aspect of bookings. One big metric that we used, and this was, a lot of the pressure for the remote guys, is the captured bookings per month. So captured bookings was the concept of someone books online. If you think about O2O, the booking that comes through, the host on the other end, the multi-sidedness of this, somebody's got to approve it, right? This is not something we can control. The guys on the ground needed to know bookings came in. They needed to know who to go talk to and call them up in 15 minutes and make sure that they accept. All that operational aspect in terms of getting SMSs, this is old school, right? Getting SMSs, getting phone calls left and right from customer service, calling up the property managers or hosts and saying, did you see that booking that came through? Can you please check your booking? Can you please accept it? And then get that confirmation. And if they can't, then the other side of it of, okay, fine, I can't complete this. I gotta now go and scour our back end and look for other replacement options and make sure they're bookable and then offer that to the customer, right? All of that process, something that, I could just say, if we said, you just deal with it, just do it, it's not gonna work. Obviously, we had to implement a lot of controls. KPIs had to kind of govern a lot of these things. These guys were owners of their local city KPIs. If you had captured bookings drop, that rate drop below, say 80% or 90%, there was trouble coming, right? And we saw that when the cities, they weren't performing, and we started to consolidate to the guys that could. So having a good monitoring of how the remotes are doing and making sure that whatever old school way we were doing it was in place is super critical to make sure that this value prop is actually gonna happen.
Sean, you have 5 more minutes.
Yep. So this is what it looked like. We did roll out across the country. In terms of the successes, it did work out. We did grow. It was key to have the teams actually come in and actually have alignment in the office at least once a month, get them on board. There are a lot of gaps that develop over time if you're being remote. No matter what you're doing, even today, I highly suggest that this in-person meeting once in a while is done to kind of close those gaps. Accountability on the KPIs, of course. And there were a lot of the micromanagement that happened back then. That was the way, right? In the Rocket world, you had to micromanage because I was accountable for delivering results. So unfortunately, I was a helicopter manager and on top of people, but that's because we didn't have the tools, right? Today, we have a lot of things that we use that kind of handle that, and seems like that it's a little bit friendlier than having me go on calling you and asking you for information. A lot of the things that we did back then where we didn't have the benefit of technology like file sharing, Dropbox was blocked. We had to overcome all of those different things, right? We did achieve #1 in the country, and interestingly, that was the beginning of O2O and sharing economy in China. My main task after Arzu was to build Rocket Internet China, which was a launch pad for HQ in Berlin. It was to be the place where we can go across the world, building up platforms, launching them, supporting them, and helping the local teams to run businesses on tech. We had to launch Lazada in multiple countries for Zalora, and the crazy thing is we're doing it every 2 weeks. And it was just, of course, you launch one, you're not done with it. So it is compounding. You keep doing this, and you're adding more and more and more on top of what you're doing as you launch new stuff, right? And we're doing this for other ventures as well, and remotely. So having tech team in China, in this case 2, supporting so many dozens of ventures, that was something to juggle, right? We talked about becoming the Amazon of Southeast Asia before Amazon could do it, right? So we would call this Amazon SCA before it had a name, and ultimately it was Lazada. So back then, we don't have the luxury of the tools today. We were doing stuff like this, right? Shared Excel files. We'd have coordination via this thing that's being passed around. Key was to have some owner, right? An owner who would be accountable to make sure everyone got this info. They owned the format. They made sure that confusion was all settled. If there was new formats or different methods or different mediums, this person would be the person to kind of roll that out, right? So we have this kind of champion of this process. We used more technology in terms of sharing, so things like wikis to have best practices. I created a RACI, which clarified who's doing what at each role. Things like, for responsibility, accountability, there was no question who was doing what, right? So that made the remoteness of everything a little bit easier. Success-wise, I think it worked out quite well. Alignment was critical across the regions, countries, China, SE, and Berlin. Again, the micromanagement issue, it's something that I really wanted to resolve for future ventures, which I'll talk about in a bit. Rocket went IPO 2014, a couple of years after those launches, and then we all know what happened with Lazada. So it's 7 AR, which is 7 years after Rocket, and we've been doing Imaginado since, and it's been a lot of learnings, continuous launches, the things that we used to do for Rocket, now we're doing for a lot of other companies. And it's all remote, right? So dedicated engineering teams, the product management, remotely managed infrastructure, virtual CTO for companies like these, being their tech team remotely, continuously being in sync, using all the tools, using all the processes. And I like to kind of sum it up like this. Like we have essentially like a framework, right? Shared understanding. Everyone thinks they understand what this means, but to get to the level that you need it to be at, it's not that easy, right? It's not just, what's going on. We both know the objectives. It is once you guys are home and separate and not in the same room anymore, that you are not in question of what's happening over there, right? And you're not wondering about things. There's no black boxes here or there. Everyone knows, where to go for, help. They know if there's an issue, how to share that, because it's not something you just, you don't share those things. You got to share those things, right? All the things about making sure you're on the same page, things are transparent, things are aligned. That is super critical, because we'll see that a lot still, where a local team might be wondering, I thought we were going to do this. And then we would be like, we didn't agree on that. So this disconnects left and right, which we now mitigate. Something called forcing functions, which it's essentially a way to do micromanagement, but digitally, right? These are functions that produces a result. You get into a situation that forces you to, it could be a reminder, it could be an activity. It's kind of like you go to Starbucks, you don't bring your power pack, your adapter, you're gonna run a battery, and that might be on purpose. You don't wanna be sitting there maybe for 8 hours. Forcing function of, I gotta get out of here after 3 hours. That's something that we do. You look at this, what digital micromanagement is, right? Today you have bots that say, okay, give me this information, update me, tell the team what you're up to in this sprint. Invites people who commit, people who are now saying it, except everyone knows, everyone's understanding that we're all gonna do this. These are functions that kind of force people to act. Things like acknowledgement, no one has an excuse now. You get added, you get mentioned, you're gonna have to, for us at least, you're gonna have to acknowledge it. And we all know that you saw it, there should be no question. And even for a lot of you guys, what sprints are. If you don't, it's essentially a way to time box to say, I'm going to do this amount of work in 2 weeks, whether it's a tech team or business. But if you're going to do it in 2 weeks and everyone's going to be remote, you better all know exactly what's going on, right? So all that shared understanding, all these mechanics, it's got to be in place, right? And finally, the tools and automation. I'm not going to talk much about this, although I was going to. I think my home's going to touch on a lot of these things, but just for my own pet peeve, just please use Slack better, right? I am in so many Slack work groups, workspaces, and the way that people use them, the companies have not implemented what I think are necessities, right? The biggest one, if you're going to use Slack to replace email, at least structure it so that you can scan through things, easily identify where threads are, and use Slack in that way. I still see a lot of kind of tons of feeds and overlapping conversations. People not, companies not actually structuring their channels in a way that makes sense with naming conventions, and then getting lost in threads, right? Things go into a thread and it's not going to notify you. So notify somebody if you're in the thread. So I think that's enough time for me to share these things. I'm always happy to talk more individually or in other group settings, but there's so much to understand about this. So thanks.
Okay, thank you very much, Sean. That's some very interesting perspective regarding micromanagement. We will dig deeper about that during the Q&A session. For now, we're going to hear from Wai Hong. So please.
All right, can you guys hear me clearly? Cool. I assume that means yes. So hi, my name is Wai Hong, Chieftain, co-founder at StoreHub. And I think Sean covered a lot about frameworks and some of his experiences with over the years and how remote working and managing companies has kind of transitioned as technology gets better. I'll kind of be focusing on this last 1 and a bit weeks. Actually, not even a week yet, 1 week and 1 day actually. And how we actually reflected a lot about this 1 week and what happened here. And if you guys do not know, if you're from other countries, Malaysia implemented a restricted movement order that basically just put everyone in homes. They announced it on Monday night and it was implemented on Wednesday. And so that's just sharing a little bit about the experience of our transition. And I guess this is something that it potentially could happen in other countries. I know in the Philippines and in Thailand, similar types of orders have been made. So this is just really sharing our experience in that time. So just a little bit about StoreHub. We're a 300 people company with offices in multiple countries. We're in KL, Manila, Bangkok, and Shanghai. So that's just the company that we are at, where we are. We have 14,000 restaurants and retailers across Malaysia, Philippines, Thailand. Our core platform is the point of sale, inventory management, and e-commerce, loyalty, all that stuff. And of course, in this time, what we saw was prior to COVID, already 10 or 20% drops for kind of sales for restaurants and retailers. And as the movement control order came into place, basically restaurants are not allowed to do dine-ins, so they can only do takeaways and food delivery. And we saw 80 to 90% drops in revenue for these customers of ours. So that was something that was really, really shocking to kind of experience. And the irony of this all is that we actually moved into a brand new swanky office in just last month. It's a 27,000 square feet space that we spent a lot of time and effort to kind of do up. We really love the office. And not even a month later, I mean, yeah, a little bit more than a month later, we were like, oh, we got to move out of this place. So it's kind of really sad, but we had to do it, right? Because, yeah, so that was the announcement. That was last Monday, I believe. And we had 24 hours to transition the entire company, or at least the entire team in Malaysia, to full remote work. So what happened? Well, we had been preparing for this in various forms already. We had a business continuity plan in place, and we had to do multiple things like around impact assessment. How does it impact the work of all the different teams? What are the tools that we use to support effective communication? What's happening now? How are we going to respond to all these things? So I'm just going to share a little bit about some of that. So some of you guys may have something like this, but basically just really getting a sense of which, I'm not sure if you can see, it's really small, but I'll read out just a few things around here. So on the most left side, you see like customer success, onboarding, opportunities, training, your customer care, you got sales coordinators, you got business consultants, you've got all these different teams, and we're assessing on every single front, like how are these guys going to be affected? Where are they going to be getting their reporting? How do we track? So we have this little column that talks about dashboard and reporting. So every team has dashboards. We are obsessed with tracking, obsessed with numbers. So if you come to the office itself, you'll see dashboards everywhere. But how do we make sure that every team gets access and visibility into these dashboards and these numbers, even when they're working from home, making sure that everyone has access to that stuff? What are the potential impact of being able to do training from home? Like, we typically do classroom trainings. How do we do that from home? So there's all these considerations that we basically walk through every single team's kind of core responsibilities and assess the impact and figure out a solution to kind of like overcome that. We built this out in different phases. So phase one, we kind of choose whether we want to put people at home. Phase two, government mandates it. And so as we were planning for this, I think it was just the weekend that we kind of finalized this plan. On Monday itself, it was announced. So we jumped phase one, phase two, and went to pretty much like the final phase immediately. So yeah, that's kind of interesting. And we even did this on an individual level. So we had to track every single person. Can they work from home? Do they have internet at home? If they don't have internet, what do we do? And we had to mobilize dongles and all different types of equipment to ensure that when people are actually working from home, they can actually work from home. We had daily check-in templates. So every single team had to work out, okay, we didn't used to have daily check-ins. Not for every team anyways, but because of this working from home approach and because it's something relatively new to us, we just felt that we needed a little bit more frequency in engaging with people and understanding what's going on. So we created these templates for every single team. All the team leads had to create this, and every single team was checking in with each other on a daily basis. I guess one of the best things though that allowed us to kind of transition relatively smoothly was that our entire infrastructure is in the cloud. I'm a bit of a geek, so I'm really, really obsessed with tools. I don't know what you guys do in your free time in the past, but I sign up for free trials of tools and see whether that will help our company. And so we have over 20 or 30 different tools that every single person who joins StoreHub would use. So I think that's something that has really been a benefit to us, and it has, when in transitioning away from the office into kind of like working from home. One of the problems that we typically see in other organizations and what other entrepreneurs feedback to me is that they have the tools, but they don't necessarily have that same obsessiveness about getting people to use these tools as StoreHub did. So kind of like for me, if I even jump into Workplace and I actually check, has everyone downloaded the mobile app? Or has everyone so basically we're so obsessed with people actually making sure that they use the tools that when this 24-hour kind of like period of transition happened, it was like, okay, well, everyone's kind of been forced to do this already. So that's a good thing. The other thing is that we want the few companies that invested heavily in pretty much everyone in StoreHub gets a MacBook. So no PCs, no Dell laptops, none. And one of the best things about this is that as a 350-person company, we don't even have a tech support. That means that if, well, basically, yeah, if your laptop breaks down, yeah, you know, there's no one to go to. But because we were all on Macs, it really helped through the transition because we just felt confident that no one was going to run into any kind of hardware issues with using Mac. And I think one of the biggest things that we learned and reflected on was that communications was the most important thing. Crazy important. Not just communications, but fast and effective. And we'll share a few of the learnings about where this was seen. So we immediately saw within Workplace by Facebook that there was a massive spike in usage immediately after we transitioned to working from home, obviously. And you can see like comments went from averaging 20 to over 200 overnight. And just reactions and posts created went from like 20-ish to like 70. So obviously engagement was like 3, 4, 5 times higher. But one of the best things about Workplace was it allowed us to kind of like make announcements. So traditionally we'd do this by email or whatever else, but we were able to kind of like make announcements fairly easily. And when the moment we moved to work from home, I'll talk about this later. We actually launched a product and a half, and I had to keep the team updated. And so I wrote these updates every single day, and I actually posted this on my Workplace and made sure that they were important. So we could mark posts as important, so they actually get highlighted. And just below the post, you can actually see on the bottom here that there is like, on the bottom left actually, there's like 100 reactions here. And so it's great to be able to, I mean, unlike email, you actually get to see, oh, okay, people are actually responding to this, they're engaging with this, there's comments, how many people have seen this. So it actually gives us a sense of engagement, how many people are actually engaging with the material. And of course, making sure I commit to these daily kind of like summaries of the day, that was super important for us. One of the problems that we experience with companies moving to chat-based organizations where literally everything is working around chat, right? There's like multiple chat rooms, and I think that was kind of from our Slack days. And I think we ditched Slack when we were 50 people, and when we started going more than 50 people. And the reason for that is that we just saw that people were not even reading chats anymore. Like people would, sometimes go out for an hour or two, and then they'll come back and they'll open up their Slack and they'll see 250 notifications. And the reality is that the majority of people are not actually reading stuff. So we actually realized that it was important for us to actually just make sure that in all these chat rooms, you've got this recaps of anything that, that was important for the whole chat room to know about, and we put them in the descriptions. We just wanted to make sure that important information was easily accessible, commonly worked on Google Docs, and Google Sheets were linked into the description as well. Basically, all the important links were put here. Zoom, all of us are using Zoom now, but I was very, very, very surprised that the majority of our people didn't know that you can actually share a whiteboard. So you can actually like use a Zoom whiteboard. I won't show it now, but you can do that. And you can also use Zoom to annotate stuff. So you can actually like, hey, look at that, right? So you can actually do that in Zoom. I think a lot of people didn't realize that. We had to tell people, you can do this. It's actually really, really useful. But of course, this was something that we only realized after we actually kind of like started working from home. The other thing that we also did was that we actually set up a perpetually online meeting room. So that there was just this one room that was just online the whole time. We called it like the war room. And basically, kept getting interrupted with quick posts. And so this perpetual online meeting room just allowed us to just jump on calls. I keep getting distracted by these posts. It keeps blocking my screen. Okay, sorry guys. And so these meeting rooms were just left perpetually on, and people could just jump on, and that really helped with just feeling like you're in the same room with people. Okay. One of the things that is pretty radical about StoreHub is that we actually do monthly performance ratings of every single employee. So every single employee in StoreHub would get a rating of 1 to 5 from their manager. We call them coaches here in StoreHub. So we have like a pro sports team kind of like mindset thingy. So it's coaches and players. And so this really, really helped because it allowed us to kind of like just get a sense of how people are thinking about their performance, how people are thinking about themselves. It is incredibly hard work. It places a lot of burden on coaches because it's not just players reporting to coaches or doing reflections on their own. It's also coaches giving feedback to players. So obviously a lot of burden is placed on leaders when we implemented the system. But we felt like this was also one of the biggest reasons why I think transitioning to work from home, we didn't feel like there was any issue because we could easily open up all these reflections and get a sense of how people are doing. We also have a project management tool called Right that's super helpful. So we place all our projects in this. I'm sure you guys use all kinds of different types of tools out there, Basecamp and whatnot. And so that's super important. This was really helpful pre-COVID days or pre-movement control orders when we were still working in offices. It was great to be able to write everything into the system and be able to reference it easily. But one of the lessons that we learned recently was that this does not work in a war. Basically, in project management tools, you typically are kind of like designating tasks by days and weeks, and you're kind of like trying to manage projects that are a little bit more long term. But in the middle of a war and a crisis like what we are in right now, we went back to spreadsheets, Google spreadsheets and Google Sheets anyway, just because we were trying to push things out within hours, right? 2-3 hours, 1 hour, 4 hours. We were tracking things on that granularity. And so project management tools actually saw lowered usage during the middle of when we actually transitioned to work from home, interestingly. Yeah, so that was kind of like some of the lessons we've learned transitioning to work from home. And I just wanted to share a little bit about this war mode thing or this war zone that I've just been describing. And so within 48 hours of moving of the announcement, the team actually, like I said, realized that all restaurants and retailers, they can't, restaurants and F&B businesses, they can't actually do dine-in anymore. So the only thing that they can do is takeaway and food delivery. And so the team actually pulled together and we actually pushed out a delivery feature within 48 hours. And so that was kind of like the reason why we went into war mode. Our engineers worked literally 20 hours, slept 4 hours, worked another 20 hours and slept 4 hours again to actually push this out. So that was kind of the context for, I guess, some of the lessons that we've learned in this last week. And then within I think this was within 24 hours of launching the previous thing, we launched a directory that actually listed all the restaurants in Malaysia that were doing food delivery, regardless of whether they were on Grab or Foodpanda or Beep Delivery or doing WhatsApp or Instagram taking. We just wanted to make sure that we supported all restaurants. And that's why we launched the directory. So literally the 1.5 products we were able to launch remotely. And so I think something that we really felt really interesting was that we felt probably as more productive, kind of like transitioning to work from home than we were when we were working in the office. And that was really such a fascinating thing to reflect on. And I think if we have a little bit more time, once this crisis passes a little bit, we'll be doing a lot more reflection as to what are the key learnings that we want to kind of keep, even though we go back to moving into working in an office, that we have learned while working from home. One of the things I would share easily is that feedback loops are really, really important, and getting fast feedback is super important in the middle of a war. So we actually created this, what we call workplace groups, where people could post up problems. So in the past, if you do customer service and a customer has a problem, you would typically submit a ticket by Jira, a QA person will review it, an engineer might look at it, and that might take a week, right? But because we didn't have that kind of luxury, we actually just literally created a workplace group, and anyone could post an issue. And you could see literally someone posts an issue, our CTO is tagged, and she tags the relevant dev, and they basically have the full context in a single post. It's not the best experience for long term, but in the middle of a war, it was the fastest way to get feedback directly from the ground straight to the engineer. So I think that's something that we felt that was really, really useful. Another thing that we did was that we had 3 sync ups every single day, 11 a.m., 4 p.m., and 9:30 p.m., where we actually did 5 to 15 minutes, sometimes a bit longer, sync ups against our war plan. Obviously, it's all grayed out because it's all quite sensitive, but the war plans, the sync ups are here just to make sure, okay, are we on track? At 9:30 p.m., we often find that people were not able to absorb much information. So we would re-announce this information at 11 a.m. and people were like, oh yeah, that's a really good idea. And we're like, well, we did talk about it last night, but because you're so tired, maybe you missed that out. So I think this was really useful as well, to just have multiple meetings throughout the day that were just 5 to 15 minute conversations. And the way we ran our sync ups was that, again, like I said, one of the biggest problems with chat is that you have so much that gets lost in the flurry of messages. So we actually had designated people in every chat group that would summarize key messages, questions, and decisions that popped up during the day in between all our sync ups. And during the sync ups, we would actually repeat and summarize all the key messages and remind everyone, hey guys, these are the decisions, these are the questions, these are the things that we have kind of like agreed on during the chat. You might have missed out on it because you were busy, but don't worry, here's a summary. And then we continue to share these recaps in the group and assign tasks accordingly in the sheets. Measure what you treasure. We have lots and lots and lots and lots of dashboards. Again, I'm sorry I can't share any of our dashboards here. These are all samples, but we have a shit ton of dashboards. It's crazy. That's super important. Give people as much data as you can. You don't want to be, just sharing spreadsheets around. Give people visualized data about traction and progress that you're making. We use a lot of tools. I believe we'll share these slides out later, so you can actually review these tools here about all the tools that we use across the board. I will point out that everything from CRM to accounting to project management, our entire call center and phone system is in the cloud. So I'm not sure how many of you guys have physical phones in your offices, but we didn't have any problems transitioning out of that because we use TalkHub.io, and basically, literally, we got out of the office into homes, and we were still able to make calls to customers, especially seamlessly. That's it. I am not sure how I was doing for time, but I bullet trained through this, and hopefully, if you guys have any questions, I'm happy to answer them.
All right, thank you very much, Wai Hong. That's a very exhaustive list of tools, and it's very useful. I am quite certain the audience would love it. So yeah, now we're going to the Q&A session, and we already have 6 questions in a row. Okay, so we received 5 questions in Zoom, and then we also have another one via email. So maybe we can start with the email one first. So yeah, this one is from Ken Go from Asia Plus. So the question is about micromanagement. So the situation that Ken Go is facing is that how do you make sure that when you are managing this team, how do you make sure that they're being disciplined so that there's a lot of freedom from working from home, right? So the concern is that what if the team, they're not being effective, they're not being disciplined enough. So how far should you as a manager get involved in making sure that they're being disciplined? So how far can you micromanage your team, which is something that Sean brought up on his presentation a lot, that in this case, micromanagement is actually something that we have to embrace. So what are your guys' point of view of that?
We can't hear you, Sean. You're muted. Sean, you're muted.
I have a conference called Bingo Card, and that's one of the items. You're muted. Yeah. I was gonna say, if you want to take that, but I also want to have my perspective. There's just from the old days and today. But the way that I look at this, you can't avoid it. You cannot avoid it. If you got to do it, you need to do it, right? But that's why you have tools today. If you're able to implement the tools right, the things I mentioned about shared understanding, if everyone is on the same page and what I call those forcing functions, if they're in place, there is an expectation set, right, of what's due and who needs to do it and the other people, and you know what they're doing. As long as those things, that kind of structure is in place with the tools to kind of be the glue, you can kind of mitigate a lot of the managerial kind of helicopter micromanagement. But there's gonna be certain things that you cannot automate. You might not have the triggers to do it. So other processes that you might feel is maybe intrusive, it's micromanagement, you might have to do some of that, right? But again, I think this goes back to what people talk about culture. Culture is super important. People have the objective, they know what we're all going for. This is why we do OKRs. Everyone knows the big picture, the thing that we're trying to get to. And you have that drive now, you understand that we're all in the same boat together. We're all moving forward to do that. So the guys that are, say, when I think about operational, the guys who say, just, I got to meet these goals. I got to churn out this many, let's say QC photos. I got to do these things. Those guys might just be, they're probably not as worried about the big picture. They just say, I just want to hit my numbers. But overall, I would say if everyone's on the same page, you're going to have this built-in natural internal push to get them to do things. If they're not able to do that, there might be other issues regarding HR, regarding how you're hiring, how the manager, if you have passivity, if things are very passive in your group, in your teams, those are all the things that I set aside, forcing functions and having shared understanding, all the things that Wai Hong just shared about, daily huddles like 3 times a day. These are things that are forced. You got to be part of that. And if you're going to be part of that, you're going to be able to see how they do, and you're going to have to deliver, right? Everyone expects it.
Yeah, so my quick contribution to that is that I think if you are worried about micromanagement, the simplest, fastest tool that we found to be most effective is what developers and product teams have been using for a very long time, the agile methodology. And the key tool that they use here is, as Sean mentioned, the huddle. The morning huddle is the most powerful thing to get a sense of are people productive or not productive, and whether how much micromanagement do you need for each different individual. And the huddle's basic framework is very simple. Everyone answers 3 questions. What did I do yesterday? What are the blockers of what I was trying to do yesterday? And what am I going to do today? Right? And everyone just answers these 3 questions very simply, whether that's over Zoom or over chat. And any of these team leads will be able to very quickly understand what's going on. So I think it's not a bad idea as everyone's transitioning to working from home to actually just literally run huddles, not just for product teams, not just for engineers, but for every single team across the board.
Yeah, actually, let me add to that. I took this out of my talk, but the agile approach, right, with Scrum, the way that you do the huddle, which is the daily stand-ups, right? Every day you align, but you also do a big planning session, right? Before each sprint, everyone's going to get, spending a couple hours together in the room or virtually, understand what's coming. This is the shared understanding. You set that aside. The daily huddles happen, but then you also do the retrospective, the big kind of review, what happened this last week. People can now share, well, this guy, this didn't come up, you didn't finish this, you didn't deliver this, or we had a breakdown here, I didn't understand what you're talking about. The retrospective is a catch-all, supposedly, for what's happened in that box of time. So then when you do the next round of planning, that you can learn from that and implement new fixes or better approaches. So I highly recommend the Scrum methodology.
Okay, thank you, Sean. Now we're moving on to the next questions because there's plenty of them. So the next one is, there are 2 questions from Jiawei. All of them are for Wai Hong. So the first one would be, how has this situation affected your team's productivity and morale? And then the next one, once the situation is over, will you continue to carry forward some of these work from home arrangements? And if yes, which one?
Yeah, so I think from a productivity perspective, I briefly mentioned towards the end just now that I actually think we are 3 times more productive. You don't even walk to meeting rooms right now, right? You literally finish a call at 11:59 and then you jump into the next meeting at 12 p.m. You have absolutely 0 downtime here. So from a purely an effectiveness and productivity perspective, it is crazy. People are telling me, Wai Hong, there's almost like no non-stop work because we're just at home. We can't even go out, right? I'm not sure long-term. So purely if you're looking at a productivity level, it is a lot higher. But is this a sustainable long-term practice? I don't think so. So yeah, that's generally my quick answer to that question. How has this affected team morale? Look, people love being productive. I think that's something that we underestimate sometimes. Is when you're able to connect your work to results so quickly, and you're able to see the impact of your work. I mean, we're hearing some of our customers, they were doing 0 sales prior to us launching Beep Delivery. Just a couple of and like 2 days after they launched Beep Delivery, they were doing more sales in that one day than they've ever done in their entire life of running that cafe. It is ridiculous. And so when you are sharing these stories across the board, when people are able to connect their work to these types of stories, it's incredibly meaningful. And honestly, team morale has been quite high. So quite interestingly, that has been really beneficial for us. The other question is, will you continue to carry forward some of these work from home arrangements? Yes. Not sure which one specifically. Some of them I can just kind of think off the top of my head is that lot more communication. I think one of the things that us leaders failed to do in the past was that we just did not communicate enough. We just did not summarize important events and situations and things enough. Like when I've been, I have been writing up end of day kind of like summaries of what's happening on the war front for everyone to see. They're long, they take a lot of effort, but they have been getting 100 likes, 100 engagement. Everyone sees it, 100 likes, and people are commenting about it. And so the engagement here is obviously very high, and people feel connected when you're able, as a leader, to communicate what's going on the war front. I think this is super important. I'm not sure what else we're going to keep doing, but those are some of the ones that I feel are going to be very helpful.
All right, thank you. And here's another one also for you as well, Wai Hong. Now that your sales team can acquire store or merchant with face-to-face meeting, did you switch their KPI? And what is the new KPI?
So. Yeah, guys, the war is real, right? So when we look at the Malaysians, I mean, you guys in Singapore haven't experienced it yet, but here in Malaysia, we've got 200,000 restaurants who are doing close to zero sales right now. And we look at our customer base, we look at around, and most of these guys have 15 to 20 days of cash flow max. So we've just extended our movement control order, and that means that that 2 weeks has become 4 weeks, and we don't know how many more weeks is that going to extend to. And so from a KPI perspective, the answer is everyone, these stores need us. You just need to close as many as are willing to kind of like take our help. And surprisingly, people are responding to that. Like people are just, I mean, we're closing a good chunk of stores. And of course, no one's paying upfront for a whole year in the same way they were comfortable to in the past. They are all going on monthly plans. So the effort to close these guys in relation to how much dollars that we're actually getting, it's not high, but there is a new sense of mission for our sales guys. And so I think from a KPIs perspective, the sky's the limit here. I mean, we tell people there's basically 200,000 stores, there's tens of thousands of stores who are likely to want to be able to use our service. Whoever they are, let's engage with them. So we didn't actually study KPIs too hard here, just because our entire customer base is threatened too, right? Like if 90% of them are doing zero sales, how many of them are going to be renewing the next couple of months? Who's going to be bothering to renew their point of sale and paying up their point of sale company next month if they're not even doing any sales right now and they have no idea like when they're going to get dining customers for the next don't know how many months? Yeah, so that's one thing. Phone call, phone pitches, how we tracking this is all in the CRM. So we use HubSpot, we're transitioning to Salesforce, and basically everything is tracked there. Every call, every meeting is recorded and tracked in these tools. So having these tools are super useful. So that's how we track everything in the CRM tools.
Okay, thank you. So the next questions are mostly to do with the tools that you are using. So we have two questions from Thaddeus here. The first one is how to balance the use of Slack, a communications tool, and project management tool like Basecamp and Asana. And then the second one, what are the other purposes for the perpetual online meeting rooms? So who would like to start first? Maybe Sean?
Sure. So although I talk about Slack is a kind of a core communication channel, but in terms of projects, things related to the actual work, we will put the kind of the meat of that into these collaboration tools. Something like an Asana or Trello. Trello is actually something super popular that we see a lot with our clients, that we like the approach of boards because it kind of follows the Scrum board approach. But all, like I said, the kind of the meat of what needs to be discussed around that actual work happens in that platform, right? We're using something called Notion, which pulls together all the different sort of online tools into one, kind of like a Pinterest board. You want to pull your Google Docs, pull links from your Evernote, whatever backend, might be links to your Salesforce. You could put it all in kind of one place. Everyone doesn't get lost. They know where it is. But Slack, that's where communication happens. That's where general, go here, you could take a look at this, go there. So we'll have a lot of reference points out of Slack to the tool itself. And the tool is just the, discussions.
All right, thank you. How about Wai Hong?
Yeah, I think I'll just engage the other question. What are the purposes for the perpetual online meeting rooms? Other purposes. So I think one of the biggest benefit of having a perpetual online meeting room is that I'm not sure you guys experience this, but when we organize Zoom meetings nowadays, we're sending links everywhere, right? We're trying to get people, oh, join this link. Oh, wait, shit, this link doesn't work now. Oh, wait, join that link. Oh, you're just wasting like 5, 10, 15 minutes just trying to sort out links sometimes when someone like screws that up. So having just one Zoom link that's just perpetually there, that's just steady, that really just makes joining a room like, hey guys, let's jump into the war room Zoom now. Hey guys, let's jump into the ops room Zoom right now, right? That's like fast. So I think when time matters, I think this is one of the biggest benefits of perpetual meeting rooms.
Yeah, actually, I want to add to this real quick. I think this also, if you go deeper into people working at home, and I've seen this too much, generally when you go home and it's quiet or you have other distractions, people tend not to want to get into a call. They'd rather not do it than do it. So when it comes time to, oh, should I do a Zoom call or should I do it? You got to remove all those kind of barriers and facilitate this as best you can. So the thing that Wai Hong was talking about, exactly the sort of wartime mechanic you need to have, where there's no excuse. It's right there. It's not hard. and people are used to it, so just do it. So just keep in mind though, people that are remote, if your teams are not, reaching out enough, and there's this tendency to kind of close up a little bit more at home, which you need to figure out how to open that up, right?
All right, thank you. So the next questions have to do with the managing KPI for remote teams. So it's from Rajkisu Rajendran. How to manage KPI for remote team, and what sort of tools do you use for this?
For us, it's just if you're in sales, you use the CRM. If you're in the success teams, it's your success platform. We use PlanHat. If you're in customer care, it's Zendesk. All these tools already have built-in ways to manage KPIs. So it's use tools basically for the right platforms for the right teams. They all have ways to manage these already. So it's not difficult.
Yeah, I agree. But we still will use we'll see Airtable or we'll see other things. If it's not automated or digitized, it's something that we would say, get that raw data, pull it into something like a Domo, some cloud BI platform that can aggregate that and spit out the actual results of how you're doing KPI, line by line.
Yep.
All right. Okay. So since we're considering the time here, there's a question that perhaps can help conclude our discussion today. So which one is better, work from home or work from the office? With everything that we have gone through.
I have strong feelings about this, but you go ahead.
I like our office. It's nice. We invested so much time into it. Look, I strongly believe that there is I don't know how long you can do work from home without meeting the people you work with. We fly people around just to meet people. And here's the thing, right? You work better with people you trust, with people you have good relationships with. Mm-hmm. And you're not going to be able to build the same level of trust and relationships with people over Zoom as you can just just going for dinner after work, just having drinks. So I think there is an incredibly real human element behind building relationships, good relationships and strong relationships by working in an office together with people. That is super critical. Have we been working in offices as effectively and as efficiently as we could have? I think this entire work from home exercise has shown us that we obviously have not. I think we could be doing the same kind of work in offices and applying a lot of these practices that we have learned working from home and becoming super efficient in the office as well, while still reaping all the relational benefits of being together in the same place together. In different teams, we also have, infrastructure across Southeast Asia is a bit choppy, depending on which countries you're in and which housing areas you're in. So obviously being able to work in the office and having all of that sorted out, that's super important too. We realized that as we kind of moved everyone to work from home. So I think multiple pros and cons on both fronts, but overall, work from office is my position, is still super, super, super valuable.
Yeah, and just add, I totally agree. And in my slides, you guys could see later, I added something that kind of shows a breakdown of working remotely and from the office. That a lot of the things that we don't think about, why is it the office works? Why is it, whether it's layout, the proximity of teams, things that are built into the office to support connectivity, the fact that not everyone is a DIY at home IT technician and you provide bring your own internet. All those things related with team, being close together, all the bonds you just talked about, you just lose all that, like the nuance in the meetings. There's just a lot of things to overcome when you're not in the office. And you could take a look at the table that I put together, but having synchronous discussions, which is you start that discussion, you end, you have a conclusion, boom, you're done, right? You're online and synchronous things are happening. It might not conclude over a period of time, right? So in terms of effectiveness and getting things done, getting to a conclusion, there's nothing that beats in person.
Yep.
Right? Because in fact, you want to simulate or emulate any of these things that are in the office you can't do outside. You got to figure out a way to match that one-to-one if you can.
Yeah, we do a lot of whiteboarding sessions and post-it notes, and it's not the same. Yeah.
Exactly.
Brainstorming over Zoom it just, it's not, we just don't have the same tools.
All right. So thank you very much, guys. This has been a very insightful conversation. So if I may conclude, there are definitely some benefits to working from home, and there are plenty of tools and resources that we can use in order to make it more effective for us and more easier to do. But there are certainly other things, other aspects of doing work that can only be done by working from the office. So there's definitely the downside and the upside of it. So now we actually come to the end of our session, and I would like to thank you everyone who have come to this event. And I would also like to remind you that we're going to have another webinar that is part of our special edition. And the next one, we're going to talk about best practices during crisis communications. How to balance between empathy, facts, and transparency. So because of this challenging time, brands, they need to adjust how they communicate with their audiences. And in the next episode, which is going to happen on Wednesday, April 8th, we're going to dig deeper about that with our speakers. So thank you very much for coming. Don't forget to connect with the E27 team on our social media platform and on our email as usual. And then for Sun and Whitehome, if the guys want to ask some questions to you, is there any way to reach out to you?
For me, I prefer LinkedIn. So if you want to just search for my name in LinkedIn, my name's fairly unique. So Wai Hong Fong in LinkedIn, drop me a message. I accept everyone in LinkedIn. I don't accept everyone on Facebook. So yeah, LinkedIn is the best way to engage. So if you want to have conversations from there, that's the best way to get me.
Yep, same here.
All right, so that's the end of our session today. Thank you very much for attending, and thank you very much for Sun and Waihong for their valuable insights and experience. So, bye everyone.
Okay, bye guys.
Bye.